Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is I'm going to go back a little bit, right? I'm slightly older than most of the people that are listening to this podcast, and I'm probably about the same age as a lot of people who are listening to this podcast. But what I want to talk about is there was a time and era of things that happened in the past that, for what it's worth, a lot of you just weren't around. And it's not your fault because your parents hadn't met and had you yet. But you just had to be there. So I wanted to call this one You Had to Be There. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm going to tell you some things that happened in the past that were really, really dope. And in spite of what I'm going to tell you, you just kind of had to be there. But I want to bring you in to these eras and these times and these things that happened in our history. First up, you guys know that I talk a lot about music, but I want to start off by saying the era of purchasing music the day that it came out, listen, you had to be there. And what I mean by that is there was an era where the music came out and you really had to be there the day that it came out, no later than the second day. If not, you would miss it. And what I mean by that is, like, back then, of course, we didn't have the technology that we have now. So you couldn't just download your favorite song or, stream it on your computer or your phone. You had to actually physically leave the house, get in a car or get on a bus or get on a train and walk to a store, a record store, a novel place that sold records and tapes and then eventually CDs. But that was the thing. Like, you had to physically leave your home to cop a record. And so what was really dope about that was that at that particular time, we were unequivocally and thoroughly invested in the music. What I mean by that is, like, you had to physically do something to go get it. So you wasn't into wasting your time. And more importantly, you were not into it for losing any money. And I'll be the first to admit, I mean, you guys hear me talk a lot about hip hop and R&B in the 80s and the 90s. Most of it was really, really dope. But I mean, it was some duds. Everything wasn't like the greatest of all time. And I don't ever want to paint that picture, because there were times when the music was whack. There were songs, there were artists that were whack. But the thing is that we were so heavily invested in the artists and in the music that we demanded more. But as far as, like, being there the day that it came out, because here's the thing. Music was in such demand that you had to be there the first day to get it, or you ran the risk of not getting it the first day. And I always go back to, and I'll probably talk about this ad nauseum on this podcast from time to time, but I always go back to Snoop Dogg's release of Doggy Style, 1993. It was his debut album. Snoop was hotter than fish grease, right? And everybody wanted this album. But the thing is that you knew your favorite local's record store was only going to get so many copies. And I remember I was in college at the time at South Carolina State University, and I went to the Prince of Orange Mall to get the CD. And what happened was they moved the release date, because back then the albums came out on Tuesdays. Well, this one was in such demand that they moved it up from Tuesday to the previous Friday, right? So the record store said, hey, we're going to open up at midnight on Friday. So the record store closed, keep in mind, at, I don't know, 9 o'clock when the mall closed. because it was, like I said, it was in the Prince of Orange Mall. And they said they were going to open back up at midnight. So me and my buddies, we show up around, I don't know, 11:45. And there was already a line at the store. And the line ran from the store all the way outside. It was that many people waiting to get this Snoop Dogg CD and tape. And we got in line. So it was very important for us to get in line and get that CD. And we got it that night. Because here's the thing. That album was so hot. That tape was so hot. That CD was so hot that if you didn't have it, you really ran because once they run out, they run out. Now they always get another shipment in, but you're really at the mercy of the record store because you don't know when that shipment's going to come in. The shipment may come in the next day. It may not come in for another week, depending on where you are. So, and again, I'm in Orangeburg, South Carolina. It's a college town. So it's like, you had to get it. And I mean, it was a bunch of dudes, bunch of chicks. It was a whole bunch of people trying to get that album. And I always use that as an example because, like, if I didn't get that album, at that particular location, that album sold out. So here's the thing. You run the risk of it selling out at your favorite store, and then you got to try to find another record store, or you got to find another place like Sam Goody or Best Buy or something like that where they carry music. And so luckily I was able to get it from the record store in the mall. But purchasing music the day that it came out was imperative back then. I mean, like, you had to get it because you did not want to be the one that didn't have it. Because here's the thing, on my campus, everybody had Doggy Style. Everybody. So you didn't want to be the one that didn't have it in your car. Because I mean, like, literally every car that passed by on the yard was bumping it. Everybody had that tape or CD. And you just didn't want to be the lone wolf. And trust me, it was a lot of people that got to the mall late that night. They were the lone wolf because, again, they sold out. I don't know how many copies they had. They could have had 200 copies and sold out that night. I mean, they made a killing. But everybody had to have that tape or the CD. And it was just something different when you had to purchase your music the day that it came out. It made you anxious or whatever, but you also, and sometimes we would have to call. Hey, do you guys have the new Snoop Dogg? Hey, do you have the new Biggie yet? Do you have the Ready to Die? No, you don't have it yet? Okay, what time do you have it in? What time can I come? I mean, it was so bad sometimes. You could call the record store, and request that they hold it for you. Literally and figuratively hold it for you. Hey, you got the new Ready to Die? Yeah, we got it, but we only have 3 copies. Hey, hold me a copy. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 10 minutes. If I'm not there in 10 minutes, they'll tell you, hey, if you're not there in 10 minutes, we're going to sell it. Okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And it was just like that. And so, like, it was a special time. And I really enjoyed that time because the music was just a whole lot more different than it is now. And again, we were personally invested in it. So we made whatever sacrifices or situations just to get to the music. And these things are no particular order that I think you had to be there for. You had to be there for Halloween. That's right, Halloween. Now, Halloween isn't something that's new. And it's not something that just happened overnight. Halloween has been happening is probably for as long as history's been going on. I say you had to be there for Halloween because Halloween at one point in time was vastly different from how it is now. I will honestly admit that even as an adult, Halloween is totally different from me as an adult as opposed to a child. One, because I'm a homeowner. And instead of me going out trick-or-treating, there's kids coming trick-or-treating in my neighborhood, in my house. I don't give out any candy. So that's that. And normally what I do, just let me just clarify this. Normally what I do is I will turn the light off in the front of my house. And if the light's off, if you see a light off in the house, the front light, then that lets the kids know that, like, either we out of candy or we're not giving out any. And I haven't given out candy, man, probably about 15, 16 years. But I'll say this. Halloween was so different back then because, like, one, you got your costumes, and for the kids who didn't really have a lot, you kind of made up a costume. But also, it was a situation where, like, sometimes Halloween could be very dangerous. We knew a lot of kids that would get hit by cars, a lot of hit and runs back then. And they were always reported on the news every year. Oh, be careful at Halloween because and I think some of them were like intentional. But yeah, you had to be careful for that. You had to be very careful and guarded about who you got your candy from. There were willing adults who would put things in your candy. I know one of my buddies, he thought that he got a Snicker bar, and it was actually X-Lax. So you know how that went. So yeah, there was, and I know there was at one point in time there was a lot of rumors in my hometown of Florence, South Carolina, that there were people giving, and I don't know how this could be, but this is what I was told. There were people that were giving out apples that had razor blades in them. Now think about that for a second. And I'm a 14, 15-year-old child at the time. Well, no, I probably was younger than that. Maybe about 10 or 11. How can you put a razor blade in an apple? I don't know that you can. But I wasn't going to try it. But Halloween was just different. I mean, it seemed to be more celebrated. It seemed to be more just about Halloween and the fun that you had that particular night, your costumes and everything. And then you could kind of make a costume out of anything. As we got older, Halloween kind of changed. The mindset of it changed. It was definitely more commercialized, definitely much more publicized. And even now, Halloween isn't really celebrated. Halloween really, particularly for retailers, Halloween gets in the way. It's the cousin that's in the way. And what I mean by that is, as soon as Halloween is over, they get right to Christmas. And what I mean by that is, you can go in your local drugstore, your local department store, whatever. The Halloween candy and everything is out. Let's use some place like CVS or Pathmark, depending on where you live. That Halloween candy is out there until October 31st. On November 1st everything is Christmas. Christmas Day, not even Thanksgiving. It's Christmas decorations, it's Christmas lights, Christmas trees. Hell, you may even go into your favorite department store and you may hear Christmas music. It's just like that on November 1st. But Halloween was different, man. I mean, like, even now as an adult, I'll be honest, Halloween is like, it's just different. I mean, you go, if you so choose to go to a Halloween party. I ain't been to a Halloween party in a couple of years. But I mean, every woman is the slutty nurse. I mean, like, there's no type of, hey, let me jazz this up. Let me be Tina Turner, or let me be Beyonce, or let me be Michelle Obama. No, every woman comes to the party in, the skimpiest of outfits, lingerie, which is, hey, good for us to look at, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, everybody it's like, it would be the equivalent of me at 10 years old going to a Halloween party and I got on a Batman costume and every other 10-year-old's in there with a Batman costume on. It looks whack. And, so Halloween, it ain't the same. I mean, and also, I'm seeing Halloween through the eyes of a 51-year-old at the time of this recording, right? So, and I remember somebody telling me, like, they's like, man, you spoiled, and you're not only spoiled, but your kids are being deprived. I was like, so what? and don't get me wrong, they've gone to Halloween parties at our church or whatever, but the days of us trick-or-treating, Even in my neighborhood, probably, I want to say Skylar was a baby. So we're talking like 11, yeah, probably about 10, 11 years ago. So it's been a while for us. And then we don't have any, I mean, like I said, Skylar is our youngest child. She's 12 at the time of this recording. So it's not like I got little kids to take around the neighborhood and walk and stuff like that. No, I'm not doing all that. My kid's not going to be walking around the neighborhood without me. So, it kind of is what it is. But Halloween, back then, you had to be there. Another thing that you had to be there for, John Madden. That's right, John Madden. Now, I'm not talking about the video game because, see, when I say John Madden, a lot of you think about the video game. No, I'm not talking about John Madden, the video game. I'm talking about John Madden, the man. Dig what I'm saying? John Madden, the man, was obviously, as many of you know, hopefully you do know, John Madden, before he became the face of his own video game, he was a coach in the NFL. He coached for many years for the Oakland Raiders. He coached from 1969 to 1978, and he won a Super Bowl in 1976 with the Raiders. And Madden Man was he was the man. But if you're not old enough to remember Madden from his days as a coach for the Oakland Raiders, then maybe you might remember him as a Hall of Fame broadcaster. Listening to Madden was a treat every Sunday that he was on, and he worked for CBS from 1979 to 1993. Then he worked for Fox Sports from 1994 to 2001. And then ultimately ABC Sports from 2002 to 2005. I think he did Monday Night Football. And then NBC Sports from 2006 to 2008, subsequently retiring in 2008. And Madden, he was everything, man. He literally was everything. He made the game look, feel, and sound fun. He made it sound very interesting, particularly for those who didn't really follow football the way that most people do. And I've been told several times that Madden in his prime really made it easy for women to grasp the game of football if they didn't really know it as well as, others. And he was beloved. I mean, he was a big guy, fun guy, jolly guy. But he was Madden. I mean, like I said, most people, depending on how old you are, you will know him from video games. But man, Madden was a guy I loved listening to him. And Madden, to his credit, always stayed very partial, because although he was very flamboyant and very friendly, he stayed very in the middle as far as, like, he never had a rooting interest. And I think that's because he came from the old school. Old school broadcasters, you didn't know who their favorite team was. I mean, like, I could listen to just about anybody right now calling a football game, and I could tell if they're rooting for this team or if they used to play for them. I mean, Madden didn't sound any more enthusiastic when he was calling Raider games as opposed to calling 49er games. And he never coached the 49ers. I mean, but he was just that guy. And I'll never forget, Madden did something. He did something that surprised me that I thought was really, really ghetto, if you will. And I'll explain. In 2006, John Madden goes into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He goes into the Hall of Fame it was John Madden, Rayfield Wright from the Cowboys, Warren Moon, Troy Aikman, what's the other guy? Reggie White from the Packers, and a little guy from Florence, South Carolina by the name of Harry Carson from the New York Giants, who's my uncle. And he's my mom's baby brother. And so my whole family's at the Hall of Fame and everything. And we're in Canton, Ohio, and it's this beautiful day. It's hot as all get out. And I'll never forget it because at the time, Sharice and I, we had our two sons. We had two sons then, Dion and Cameron. And Sharice actually was pregnant with our youngest son, Brandon. And it's like 95 degrees. It's hot. So Madden comes up there. I mean, you know, they do the induction or whatever like that. So it's 6 people that are going to speak. And obviously, you know, it's going to take a while, right? So Madden does something that's really, I say ghetto, but I don't mean it in a distasteful way. But Madden is up first, right? So he gets inducted. He comes up and he's presented. He gets his bust. He says his speech. And when he's done saying his speech, everybody stands up, giving a standing ovation. Madden comes down, and all of the family sat in the front. First 2 or 3 rows is where the family sat for all of the inductees. And Madden comes down, he greets his family, they give him a hug. He's got these sons, the sons are big guys like him. Kisses everybody. And instead of sitting down, John Madden and his entire family dipped. Meaning they left. They left. They didn't hear nobody else speak. They didn't care. They were like, man, it's too hot for this. And while I think that's ghetto and that's, you know, distasteful, but it was funny though, because it's like, you really expected him to sit down. But when he walked off, it was like, oh, I get it. Because trust me, if my uncle had given the speech first and we could have bounced after he finished speaking, I would have left too. Because I didn't, and not, and no disrespect, I wanted to hear everybody speak. But I had a wife who was, at that time, she was what, 6, 7 months pregnant? Yeah, sitting out in 95-degree heat, I wasn't trying to have her pass out. So, but I mean, you had to be there for Madden. And again, I love Madden. I just thought that was a funny story that I wanted to share with y'all from the Hall of Fame. You know, he and my uncle are linked because my uncle called my uncle's Giants games, many of them. And he had a lot of great respect for him, had a lot of great things to say about him all the time. And then with them being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at the same time, you know, they're classmates, if you will. So, and unfortunately, Madden passed away in 2021, but definitely rest in peace. And again, if you weren't around for the Madden era, the Madden in the booth era, you had to be there. It was an event. It was a time. What else you had to be there for? You had to be there for my Adidas. Not the song, but the shoe. Adidas, specifically Shelltoe Adidas. Shelltoe Adidas were the signature shoe for Run DMC, the iconic, and in my opinion, the greatest hip-hop group of all time. You had to have some Shelltoes. The Shelltoes were the signature thing for Run DMC. And they came out, the song came out, My Adidas. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember the song. It is only one of the greatest songs in hip-hop history. But that song dropped in 1986. And so I think I was in like 8th grade. And Shelltoe Adidas sales were through the roof. And it was because they were being marketed and promoted by Run DMC. I mean, imagine, I don't know, for the sake of saying, let's say Drake says, hey, this shoe right here is the greatest shoe of all time. And he makes a song about a particular shoe. No matter what the shoe is, that shoe is going to sell through the roof because Drake has a legion of fans. So let's say Drake, Beyonce, and Swift Taylor, they sing a song about one shoe. I mean, those are 3 of the biggest artists in the world. Drake, Beyonce, and Swift Taylor. I mean, come on, man. So that's kind of like how it was for Run DMC back in, 1986. And so subsequently, everybody had Shelltoe Adidas. You had to be there for the Shelltoe Adidas era. If you didn't have Shelltoe Adidas, you were missing out because they were the signature shoe for hip hop. They were the signature shoe for, well, it was called rap at the time. And the Shelltoe Adidas is probably only one of a couple of pair of, I never really had many Adidas. I was always a Nike kid. And but it was an era. It was an era. And I mean, like, because Run DMC was the premier face for rap, and they were so much, you know, copied and studied and looked up to. If Run DMC said something, if he said Lee on my legs and Adidas on my feet, we were trying to get some Lee jeans and trying to get some Adidas. And specifically the Shelltoe Adidas. It was a great era. It was a great era, man. I think that at that particular time, that's the only time I've ever owned a pair of Shelltoe Adidas. I never bought any more after that. But it was a great time. What a time. Matter of fact, big shout out to the to the Adidas crew in my hometown of Florence, South Carolina. You know who you are. What else? You had to be there for. Oh, you had to be there for cordless phones. Man, listen. Cordless phones were the joint. Don't get me wrong. I remember the days of being on the phone, you talking to a girl, and you got the cord and you swing the cord around your head and swinging it around, or maybe you're tying yourself up in the cord, or maybe just wrapping the cord around your fingers. That was fun. But the cordless phone was a different animal because it allowed you to move about the house. You had to be there for the cordless phone era. In my case, not only could I talk on the cordless phone in the house, but our cordless phone had a nice little range. So I could actually go outside. I could actually sit in the driveway. I could go sit in the car. I did a couple of times. How can I say this? Go sit by our pool, because we had a pool, and be on the cordless phone and be chilling. I mean, of course, they couldn't see you, but you get the point, right? It's the vibe. It's the aesthetics of it. And it was a great time, man. Cordless phones were the joint. Now, of course, you had to charge them. And that was the first phone that we actually charged. So long before your iPhone came, long before your Android came, long before your flip phone came, long before your Palm Pilot came, we had to charge the cordless phone daily and nightly. So, you know, when you finish that joint, put it on the base. You know, you could not be on the cordless phone for a long time and then put it down and just leave it. Oh, you would get it in my house. Oh, you get in trouble, Jack. You had to literally put that thing back on the base so it could charge. And in my case, with me, my cousin Eric, and my brother Damon, my younger brother Damon, all of us, you know, 3 teenage boys in the house. Let's just say this. We had to make sure that the phone was charged, and if the phone was damn near dead, you better tell somebody, like, hey, don't get on that phone because the phone's about to die. Because nothing is worse than Eric had been on the phone for an hour, Damon had been on the phone for an hour and a half, and then some little hottie calls me, I get on the phone, and then I hear the phone go beep, beep. Nah, cuz. Nah, man. Once that phone beeps, you know, like you gotta, and then you gotta hang it up or you gotta put it on the base. You can't keep your phone conversations going because at that point, once the phone dies, you're not getting any more phone calls, at least coming through. So the cordless phone era, you had to be there for that. The next one you had to be there for, and I touched on it on previous episodes, but it's worth repeating, the quiet storm, the dedication hour, whatever you want to call it. For those of you who missed that episode or don't know what I'm talking about, the quiet storm, at least in my hometown, Florence, South Carolina, on the radio station at like 9, 10 o'clock, they would have what they call the quiet storm. And I think it was nationally syndicated, where they would play slow, it's the point in time of the day, evening, it's the Mac hour, right? So you're going to play slow music, R&B, and this could be the time that you could call in and dedicate a song to your lady or your boyfriend. You ain't really dedicating no song to your friends, but there was a couple people that would call in and dedicate a song to their friend. But yeah, it was all about kind of letting people know, like, and that was a big thing, especially because, again, I'm not in a big place. So it'd be different if the dedication hour was on, I don't know, whatever the radio station is in New York or Chicago or LA or Atlanta. But for me, it was big because of my hometown not being as big as those major cities, right? And so if you called into the radio station for the dedication hour of the Quiet Storm and they read out your dedication over the air, man, that was props. That was props, dog. That was props because everybody heard it. So if, let's say, I don't know, let's say I call the radio station and I say I want to dedicate Always by Atlantic Star to Sheila, right? Not only is Sheila going to hear it, but Sheila's friends are going to hear it. And that's going to give me mad props with Sheila. So you wanted to do that. You wanted, and you never knew. I mean, like, you would call in, but sometimes your dedication would make it to the air. And so, like, it was always a thing, man. And this would be like for a couple of hours. And the hardest thing really was just trying to get through to the line because everybody was calling the radio station between that time. So I know people, I know people who were supposed to be asleep and they were calling the line trying to get on dedication hour, Quiet Storm. So those were good times. You had to be there for that. And I always think, every time I think about the dedication hour, I remember, and I'm not going to repeat either of these people's names because I know that they're going to listen to the podcast. I remember a young lady called in the dedication hour. And she said, I want to dedicate I'll Take Your Man by Salt and Pepper to Sharon. And I'm using Sharon as, let's just say it was Linda and Sharon. My name is Linda. I'm calling to dedicate I'll Take Your Man to Sharon because I will take your man. And they played I'll Take Your Man by Salt and Pepper. And when I tell you, that happened, I'll never forget, it happened on a Friday. By the time we got back to school on Monday, they were ready to squabble at lunch. Because, I mean, this girl really called it, and she used her real name. She said, I will take your man. And the cool part about it was the guy, he was liking both of them. He wasn't committed to either one, but he was liking both of them. And the funny thing is, I know all three people. But I'm not going to release their real names. They know who they are. And if you're listening or watching, thank you. What else? Another thing that was big that you had to be there for was jump rope, double dutch. I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think kids jump rope like how we used to jump rope back in the day. I mean, like, we used to jump rope all the time in PE class. Sometimes you just jump rope in the neighborhood. Now, I will say this much. As a guy, I've never thought about, never attempted, never will double dutch. Double dutch was for the girls, at least where I'm from. I don't know about where you from. I mean, where I'm from, if if you were a guy and you got into the double dutch, we kind of looked at you funny. I mean, it's the 80s. We didn't know no better. Don't fight. But yeah, man, it was like that. It was really, really like that. Double dutch, jump rope, and listen. I will maintain this fact to this day. And I've seen several instances where there's been double dutch, competitions or whatever like that. The girls in the middle of the double dutch competition always were cuties. Always. There was never an ugly girl in the double dutch mix. Never, ever. Maybe some of the girls who would twirling the rope, but the one in the middle, like Moni, never. Where I'm from, never. Always a cutie. Always a cutie. But yeah, you had to be there for jumping rope. Shout out to Jump Rope for Heart too. They did that in the schools back in the day. Oh yes. Next, something else you had to be there for: the Dewey Decimal system. Now I know that's going to be foreign for a lot of you. The Dewey Decimal System basically was a system that they set up in libraries to help you be able to find the books in the library. It's foreign to a lot of you because, like, one, I don't know that y'all go to libraries. And two, if you do go to the library, I don't necessarily know that you're actually looking up books. I mean, like, because we all have cell phones. You can look up whatever you want to look up. You can look it up on your cell phone. I don't necessarily know that you need to go to a library to find it. But the Dewey Decimal System was named after Melville Dewey. And this is back in the 1800s. And it's that old. And the best way that I can describe it is that the books were set up based on a number system based on whatever the categories was. So if you were looking for, I don't know, like let's say you're looking for like a geometry section, or a math section. So let's say the math section was 500. So you might have natural math, natural math and science might be section 500. Section 510 might be mathematics. Section 515 might be geometry. Section, I don't know, 518 might be metric geometry. So it just really depends. And I mean, because obviously geometry and metric geometry is two different things. But it was fun, man. It was a good way to learn your way around the library. And we learned it and we mastered it pretty, at least from what I can remember, relatively easy. But yeah, the Dewey Decimal System, man, that was dope. You literally had to be there for that. Another thing that was dope that you had to be there for, the era of voicemail. And I'm not talking about like the voicemail on your phone. I'm talking about like the physical voicemail that you could leave someone on a tape. It was like a tape recorder and it was a little small cassette tape and you could leave someone a message. And that was a dope era, man, because like not only could you leave someone a message, but you could record your own message as well. So my message might sound something like this. Yeah, you've reached 12 Kyle. I'm not in right now to take your call. Leave your number and I'll get back with you as soon as possible. Peace. Now, that's how mine might sound. But like other people, man, dudes would have like Jodeci playing in the background. They might have some mixing and scratching. The ladies, hi, I can't come to the phone right now. You know, it's trying to sound all sexy and stuff. It was a time, man. It was a time. Y'all, if you missed it, I'm sorry. Listen, I'm sorry. Blame your parents because they should have had you earlier. That was a great era. I mean, like, even hearing it in music was dope. Listen, that was just a great era, man. I missed that era. Another era that you had to be there for, the coat era. And what I mean by the coat era, two coats in particular. The triple fat goose, the triple fat goose down jacket, and the starter jacket. So it's the coat / jacket era. Let's just call it that. So the coat / jacket era. Yeah, the triple fat goose, or we used to call it triple fat goose down jacket, was this big heavy jacket. And it was just that. It was a puffy coat and it was made of goose down. Now, if you know, goose down is very fluffy and it's very soft and it's very comfortable. And so like the triple fat goose was a status symbol in like the early 90s. If you had a triple fat goose, like you had some money. Personally, I didn't want a triple. I never wanted one. Because one, the coat was huge. And it seemed like everybody that I knew that had a triple fat goose jacket was almost like as long as a trench coat. So it went beyond your waist, almost down to like your knees, right? And so for me, I'm like, I'm 5'7", right? So I'm not a tall person. So me with a long ass coat on just didn't look right to me. And then the more important thing, I grew up in Florence, South Carolina. It's not a really cold place, relatively speaking. Now we have cold days, but I mean, it's not like I grew up in Harlem or, Chicago or Minneapolis. That's different. Then you would need a triple fat goose. But nah, didn't need one. I will say this much. I did have a friend who had a triple fat goose jacket, and he also had a pager. And I was convinced that he was selling drugs. Shout out to D Love Hall. My boy Derek. And he later convinced me that he wasn't selling drugs, but I knew for a fact he was selling drugs because only drug dealers had pagers and triple fat goose jackets. The second jacket was the starter jacket. Listen, I never owned a starter jacket. Starter jackets in the late 80s, early 90s were everything. It was a status symbol. I mean, like back then, owning a starter jacket was almost like the equivalent of having Jordans. Like it was a status, but these jackets were about, I don't know, between $75 and $100. And my mom, she was not having it. She was like, no, I'm not buying you no starter jacket. And so never got a starter jacket. And what more in particular, the parka was the jacket that I wanted. It's a start. You can look them up. You can Google them. Starter jackets and then put parkas. How they look. Not the not the zip up ones, not the pullovers, but the real with the full zipper down in the front. And they were all, we all got the teams, whether or not you got it like Chicago Bears or 49ers or the Raiders. The Chicago Bears and the Raiders were the most popular ones. But again, you had to, we were so big on our team. So like, I grew up a Giants fan, still a Giants fan. So I'm not, it wouldn't have made sense for me to get a starter jacket, a Raiders starter jacket, because I wasn't an Oakland Raiders fan. But those jackets were so cold, man. They looked so dope on everybody. And I never got one, man. We just couldn't afford it. So, and I look now, I just did this just the other day just to see if I could find one. Like, you have a couple of people selling them on eBay, but I'm like, I don't really trust that. But they don't sell the particular parkas like they used to. Because, I mean, again, this is like 91, 92. So you're talking 30 plus years, right? So personally, I still want one. I will pay any amount of money. Well, I ain't gonna say any. I'll pay up to like, I don't know, $400 for one. If I could find one, and they don't even cost that much. But if I could find one, so if you know somebody that makes one or you know where you could direct me, hit me up, shoot me a DM, get in contact with me, hit me up and let me know. But I want the parka, not the regular joint. And at this point, I would love a Giants one, but I'll take another team. I just want it for nostalgia. That's all. And last but not least, the eras that you had to be there for. You had to be there for the blog era. Man, listen, the blog era was everything. Many of you know, some of you don't know, I currently have a blog. I've had this blog since 2007, and it's called The 12th Planet. And interestingly enough, through that blog, that is where 12 Kyle, the social media profile, began. I thought about blogging. I'd come across a few blogs at the time that I started my blog. I had just lost my job and I needed some type of outlet, some type of creative place to kind of kick it and get my thoughts out. And it was my blog. I commented on a couple of blogs, and my homegirl, Lisa Renee, shout out to L Renee. She was like, you should start a blog. She had a blog and she was like, you should start a blog. And I was like, you think so? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, I don't even know what I would call myself. And she was like, 12 Kyle. And she gave me the name 12 Kyle. And Shout out to Lisa. That's family right there. And so it began. So my social media imprint began with 12 Kyle, the 12 Planet. And I would write on this blog daily. I mean, just covering a wide range of topics, similar to what I do here on this podcast. And I'll never forget, like, a couple of people came and visited, and they commented on my blog. And the thing was, back then, if somebody commented on your blog, then you go to theirs, and you read what they wrote, you comment on theirs as well. This was like early Twitter, really. And I'll be honest, it opened me up to a whole bunch of people on the internet, because again, the internet was relatively new. We're talking 2006, 2007. And I made lifelong friends through the blog era. And I mean, like, we had a ball. Many of you know Eclectic, who's on here all the time. That's where we connected. We connected via blogs. And what's interesting, I tell people all the time, like, I used to read his blog, and I didn't know if he was a real person, because you haven't seen his face. I thought he was like a machine or something. I was like, this dude ain't real. Or maybe he's some white guy and he's flaking and perpetrating. And then we ended up doing podcasts together and stuff like that. And we officially met a couple of years ago. And he's a real person. But yeah, he I made a lot of friends through the blog era. And the blog era was dope, man, because it was, for me, it was a collective of, I don't know, 20, maybe 30 people. And we were all young, kind of coming up, doing our thing. And we all had blogs, and it was a community. And it's only a handful of us now that still have our blogs. I don't even touch my blog for the most part. I don't think I've written anything on there. I've made posts, but the posts have been about the podcast. I think the last time I wrote something was probably about 2 years ago. And I keep saying I'm going to write something. No, I did. No, I wrote something last year. Not a lot though. And I think social media, what became Twitter, because Twitter was early, and and it's funny because it's like all of my Blogger friends, we left Blogger. Well, not left Blogger, but we took our focus from Blogger to Twitter. But when we were on Twitter, our tweets were so infrequent. Like, I might tweet once a day. And the tweet might just be, "What's up?" Or "I'm chilling at McDonald's for lunch." And that's it. That was it. Like, and then the tweets came so infrequent that I would actually get text messages when my friends would tweet. So if Eclectic sent a tweet, it would come to me as a text. Even if he didn't at me, it would come to me. But he would only tweet like once a day, or once every 2 or 3 days. And it was just our little community. And, that's how we went from blogs to Twitter. And Twitter was really, really dope back then. And then y'all showed up and ruined it. But yeah, you had to be there for the blog era. The blog era was really, really special. If you're interested, my blog is still up. It's called The 12th Planet. Go to what's the website? the12planet.blogspot.com. The 12, the number 12, planet.blogspot.com. And all my posts are still there. You can actually read the first post that I wrote. It's called The Genesis. Every now and then I go back and I pull some and I read them just to see where I was. Because, like I said, when I first started the blog, I wasn't working, and then I got back to work, and the blog really took off and it started getting to be more popular. And met a lot of friends, met some weirdos, and met some really cool people that were really special. So I really enjoyed the blog era, but you had to be there for that. In conclusion, I wanted to just take some time to talk about some things from back in the day that weren't that long ago, relatively speaking. At least for me, it doesn't feel like it. But I just wish some of you had been there, because I can tell you and I can give you these stories and I can give you the vibes. But for some things, you just had to be there. I mean, like, it's cool to watch a football game now, the NFL game. But if you were there for when Madden was calling the game, man, listen. If you don't believe me, when you're finished listening to this podcast, go to YouTube, just type in John Madden. and listen to him call some of these games, he's funny. He's funny, but he got right to it. And he made it easy for people who didn't necessarily follow the game to follow him. And you just had to be there. And like I said, I wanted to give this some conversation and some legs, because really and truly, for some things, no matter how much I tell you, no matter how much I wax poetic, no matter how much I delve into what used to be the good old days, in a lot of ways, you just had to be there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. The podcast drops every Thursday at midnight. And from time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays at midnight. Be sure to hit us up on all the socials and follow on Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, and now on TikTok. We got clips on TikTok. Follow, like, subscribe to the page on YouTube if you want to watch videos. There's videos for every episode that we do. And if you feel so inclined, you want to hit us up, send us some dollars. Hit us up on Cash App. $TWELVEKYLE. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. And this has been a take. We took a look back on things that you had to be there for. If you weren't there, at least you got a chance to listen to me talk about it. Again, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. Bye.